we think brakes. Whenever we think brakes, we think hydraulics. Uh, so that's the kind of thing I may ask you, like if I say, well, what's the hydraulic pressure? And I would hope that you would say, okay, the pressure's, or quantity, and you would just want to check on the brakes. So keep that in mind. Okay, then you're doing your before start, so make sure the engine master switch on whatever engine, that's 1 and 2, this is a twin engine airplane, is set to the off position. Make sure the throttle control lever of the engine 1 and 2 is the idle stop position. And check the brake pressure indication on the blue pressure on the blue system. So same thing we're doing. We're going to in your flow, you're going to make sure everything's prepared for the start. So our fuel levers in cut, the thrust levers at idle. Pretty straightforward. It's exactly the same, except you're just going to watch. Our interphone is actually us looking out the window, but generally you'll have someone on an interphone that you can communicate on the ground. Check the aircraft is cleared and that nobody remains in the dangerous areas. So what that's talking about is prior to our engine start, we will have permission from the aircraft or the air traffic control for engine start. We will have permission from the ground man that everything is clear. So keep that in mind. We must talk to the ground before we crank the engine. Okay, so you can see here on the ECAM, this is push the fuel key to get the fuel page. So this is a screen that the ECAM, we can look at any system, and they're just buttons. You just push it whatever system you want, and you'll see the exact schematic of the fuel system on the airplane with operating valves and pumps and you name it. So you'll be able to see it in real time when the valve opens or closes. So when we put the fuel on, you'd see that. So make sure that there's a correct quantity of fuel in the fuel tanks to run the engine. Remember, you need quantity for the taxi, the run, hydraulic cooling, and weight and balance, depending on the airplane. So you would want to make sure that there's enough fuel in the airplane, because some airplanes have a minimum taxi fuel in order to solve all of these issues. Remember, the hydraulic lines usually go through the coldest tank, depending on the type of airplane. Like in our 727, I think it's number 3 tank. But the larger the airplane, there's going to be hydraulic cooling lines in pretty well every fuel cell. So that means you're going to have fuel in every fuel cell. We don't run our hydraulics long enough. Right now, our number 3 tank is empty. I don't run the hydraulics long enough to worry about getting temperatures. So that's why I don't have any fuel in there. But generally, when you're moving the airplane, you'll have if you don't have you're at the minimum fuels, you're going to want to make sure that the fuel is exactly where it's supposed to be. And you see here, cautions. Notes and cautions are really important, and warnings. Do not motor, start, or operate the engine unless the aircraft fuel pumps operate or the damage can occur. The engine, fuel pump, and hydromechanical unit are lubricated with fuel. So again, with everything on the airplane, you want to make sure that the fluids are there. It's not just fuel, hydraulics, etc. Everything. Okay. And then it says push all the fuel pumps, push button switches. The off legends of these push button switches go off. These are called switch lights. In a slang, meaning the switch operates something and it indicates something. So it's pretty straightforward. If it's off, when you push the switch, the off legend just goes away. So when you look at these glass cockpits, the switches you'll see, these push button switches, it'll be mostly dark. I mean, if you had everything up and running, the flight displays and everything, engine, the ECAMs, everything, and then the actual control panels for these systems, the control panels will look basically either dark or they'll be either off legend or normal or on. Normal is usually, or normal could be auto, depends on the airplane, but usually the airplane will fly in a normal or auto configuration. And so the airplane will sense things and just automatically operate anti-ice valves, that kind of stuff. So it's a little different than our analog airplane where there's just a bunch of confusing stuff everywhere. Okay, so then you see supply the aircraft with pneumatic air. Well, as soon as we're using the APU, and you will bring on the bleeds, and you would do the same thing on this airplane as well. So and then it says on the panel, set the exit light or beacon switch to on. So prior to our engine start, just like our flow, when we're ready to crank engines, after we get permission from the ground and controller, we'll say, okay, turning one and ready to start engines. We'll put the beacon on, and we'll start our sequence. Okay. And you see the cautions. Make sure you follow the limitations for the starter. That is something that this week you should have memorized for our starter duty cycles on our 727. So here's the action, and you see the result on the left. So on this panel, set the engine start selector switch to the ignition start position. So that's a master that covers everything, and you would select a certain engine after that. You can see right down here the master switch. So set the engine start selector to the ignition start. You see on the engine page comes into view, and you see the air pressures between 25 and 55. The oil quantity is correct. If necessary, fill it. So it'll show you all of this on the engine page. And then on this panel, set the engine master switch to on. That's the fuel on. And you see this symbol for the starter valve opens. So right away, we would have the duct pressure visual to us up here. And when we hit the master switch, the system display will show us the start valve open on our pneumatic system. So just like we see in our 727, only this thing you're not really touching much. And then on the system display, you monitor the main parameters, N1, N2, EGT, fuel flow. On the ECAM, at approximately 10% N2, the A or B indication comes into view. Now, remember I said some airplanes have an A and a B and a both selection for the igniter. And depending on where the airplane is departing from, A or B would be selected. So this airplane can automatically do that. It knows that if its home base is Toronto, that it's going to use a certain igniter. And so again, this is where the air crew are testing the igniter's operation. So if it doesn't work, then it'll go to B, and then it would enunciate, and you'd have to do something. Okay, so 10% you get the ignition. Okay, monitor the oil pressure. This is all you're doing, watching this. So again, here we are. We're cranking the engine. We get N2 right away. We got duct pressure. We got a start valve open light. When we get oil pressure and positive N1, it doesn't matter. You still have to have it. At 50% N2, the start valve is closed, and A or B ignition goes out of view at approximately 54%. So all of this is happening, and you're monitoring N1, N2, EGT fuel flow. When the computer sees N1 and its oil pressure is alive, it's going to add fuel. So then all of this will happen. You will see fuel flow happen. You will see EGT. So just like our engine start, we'll crank the engine. We get duct pressure, start valve, N2 right away. And then watching for oil pressure will come up. We have N1. Then we'll put the fuel goes in. All this happens between 0 RPM and 50%. Any questions so far? Okay. So then you see the actual symbol for the start valve is closed, and the A and B indication goes out at 54%. So no, during pack valve closing, the pack fault legends on the panel come on until the pack valves are fully closed. This is a disagreement indication as well. Okay. And then to note, in the auto mode, the ECU supplies automatic sequencing of the starter, valve position, ignition, and fuel. The starter air valve opens at the initiation of the start sequence. At 10% N2, the ignition is turned on. At 15%, fuel flow is turned on. At 50% N2, the starter air is closed. And at 54, the ignition is shut off. So the same sequence that you monitor when you're doing a manual start. And this airplane, you can do a manual start, and it would be exactly like we do in the 727. Instead of just coming up here and just putting this on and away you go, you would be cranking and adding it at specific RPMs. Where are we? Ignition is turned off. The ECU will automatically interrupt the start for failure to light off, stall, or over temp. In addition, the ECU will enunciate low starter air pressure and low fan speed. Starter time limit and starter crash engagement protection is also supplied. Starter crash means that the engine is not stopped before it reattempts another start. So in these auto starts, they will generally auto abort 3 times. So if it senses any kind of issue, whatever it is, and it mentioned most of them here, doesn't light off, it stalls, it's rapidly approaching the start limit, low pressure, low speed, hung engine, that's what that means. It will stop the start, and it'll do that 3 times. So once it stops the start the first time, it'll allow the engine to spool down, and before it stops, it'll re-engage the starter and crank it up again. And it'll do that 3 times before it says, okay, we don't want to start here for some reason. Remember, it's still up to you to put the airplane into wind. It's still up to you to make sure that pressures are right, battery voltages are right, all of these things prior to attempting even an auto start. Okay, the ECU will stop the start if the light off does not happen in, oh, look at that, 20 seconds. Look at that. Even the airplane waits 20 seconds. Remember that. That is the magic number, 20 seconds. We can motor the engine for 2 minutes. We talked about that last week. So keep that in mind. But generally, you will motor things for 20 seconds. You will clear the engine from fuel for 20 seconds. You will cool the engine at 20 seconds. You will wait for any parameter for 20 seconds before you make a decision. So then you can see here, so it'll stop the start. If light off does not happen in 20 seconds, then it will then automatically dry motor the engine. The ECU will declare a start abort. This will result in a start abort indication on the ECAM system display. If it occurs, set the engine mode selector switch to normal, so you're basically shutting down the engine. Set the master switch to off. After the starter cools down, the operator must decide to try another auto or start, or to stop and correct the problem. Like I said, you're going to make a decision. Okay, and you can see down here it's giving you some tips here. So a rapid EGT increase along with a slow core engine RPM acceleration can indicate an incorrect fuel schedule, faulty instrumentation, engine damage, or excessive deterioration. The start must be stopped before the EGT limits are exceeded. The fault must be investigated and corrected before another start is attempted. So it's telling you what could be the problem, and obviously that's why we look at things prior to, so we can eliminate these issues like start issues, and that's why I talk about hung start after starter cutout. We want to differentiate where the problem is as soon as possible. So I'm not saying that people are going to say, oh, hung start is specifically what I described, because the engine can hang anywhere. But you want to know, was it before or after the starter was disengaged, so that you can have a direction to follow. Okay, then you can see, okay, when the engine idle speed is stable, set the engine mode selector switch to normal. And it recommends that we operate near idle for a minimum of 2 minutes. That's why we talked about on our 727 the green arcs in the indicator. oil temperature should be in the green before you take the engine off of idle. But it also says here you can taxi a little bit as long as the engine is within, uh, you don't take it too far off the idle. And it tells you how to start and stop the engine. So right here is the ECAM that you can see. It's pretty straightforward. These are the primary indicators on the above screen and the lower screen. So this is centralized between the two pilots on the front panel. And you can see that we have EPR, N1, and EGT. So that's what they fly with. And they usually have those up all the time. And these cues over here are basically saying it's below there's stuff below, secondary stuff below. So you can click on them and you can pull individuals up, or you can look at the next screen completely and put them all up there. Also, when you're flying or operating the engine, doing a taxi or running, if any one of these things causes an issue, it will pop up automatically. So if your oil pressure, oil temperature, quantity, etc., is an issue, it will display right away to draw your attention to it. There will also be an oral warning as well. It might be like a bing bong, that kind of thing. Beep, beep, some weird noise. And you can see these are the secondary instruments: fuel flow, oil pressure, temperature, quantity, vibration. And they're listed this way, like this, and then down here. Okay, good. I want to get down to, look at that. That's upside down. I don't want to worry about that. So I want to review this internal engine fire. Indication may not necessarily be high, EGT, unless the fire rolls into the tailpipe. I don't think you would see any indication on the engine instruments. This is generally the fire would be contained into the burner. But I mean, if the engine's windmilling or anything like that, it may blow the fire back into the tailpipe and you may see it there. But depends on where in this airplane, it has EGT, exhaust gas temperature. If it has turbine inlet or turbine outlet, you're not going to see it at all on the indicator. So keep in mind, the internal engine fire is reported visually. Someone will see the smoke. Okay. Then we talked about how we put it out. Well, this tells you technically how to do it on this airplane, but we will crank the engine, and our 727 is up to 2 minutes. But you can see here, put the master switch in the off position, dry motor the engine to blow out the fire. It's simple. You hit the start switch, and it'll crank. And if the master switch is in off, it won't do anything else. And you can see if it cannot be extinguished by motoring the engine, or if motoring is not possible, push the fire button on this thing, but it's not going to do anything. You would extinguish the fire with ground equipment, okay? So pouring water through the engine, so if it's in the hangar for some reason and it happened, you could get a hose and just run the water through the core engine as you crank it inside the hangar, if possible. You may end up pushing the airplane out, that kind of stuff. But remember, you will not do igniter checks inside the building. Pretty well the only way this could happen to you in an abnormal situation. But we can crank it, we can start it, and if that still is an issue, then we can, from a running condition, we can just pull the fire handle and the engine will spool down and flame out eventually. It may take about 10 minutes, but it will. And then we have the external fire. That's through fire detection. Straightforward, and you all know the fire drill by now and the 5 things that happen, I'm quite sure. And then it describes it to you here as well. And then we have a no start. Again, 20 seconds. No start means you don't know what's going on here. If light off does not occur in 20 seconds after the selection first igniter, the ECU closes the fuel metering valve and motors engine for 30 seconds. We would do our stop start and we will motor for 20 seconds. The computer will automatically do all of this in an auto start. hot start, temperatures rapidly approaching the start limit. You can see it right here. Okay. Rapidly approaching the start limit. Hung start, no acceleration after starter cutout. Over temperature, we don't want to get there. Okay, you will move the thrust levers nice and gently, and we won't even talk about that because you're not going to get there. Low or no oil pressure, really simple. Shut the engine down. Scavenge over temperature. This one you're allowed is between 160 and 175 degrees for 15 minutes. Our engine is 120, above 120 in the yellow, and it can be 15 minutes as well, maximum. You're going to need to know that. Don't forget. Compressor stalls should not happen to us. And that has everything to do with wind speed, wind direction, and movement of the thrust lever. So if you're into wind and there's lots of wind, it will not compressor stall. But if there's a high wind speed and you're not into wind, you're not maybe, more than likely, you'll get a compressor stall no matter how fast you're moving that thrust lever. Okay, good. I'm done with that. Boom. Any questions? Beauty. Okay, here's our book. Does everybody have the book out there? Okay, who can tell me how much fuel will Canador usually have in the aircraft? Anyone? Hello?
15,000 pounds.
Mr. Cleary, excellent. 15,000. 150,000. Yes, that's what we try to get in there. We only had 11 this time, 11.4, but the answer is 15. Can anybody tell me the wingspan, length, and tail height of the airplane? Anyone?
The wingspan's 108 feet. The length is 133 feet, and the tail height is 34 feet.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Good answers. Where is the air stair exterior control panel? Someone? Gonna make me go through this, are you? Gonna make me ask people? Okay, I'll ask you. So, Mr. Hannes.
You caught me as I just put some food in my mouth.
That's beautiful.
I have written down right here, it's forward and to the right of the air stair. I'm not very sure about this one.
I think you're actually very, very accurate. It is just forward and to the right side of the air stair. Good. Okay, where's the APU located? I'm going to go with Mr. Stopa. Mr. Stopa.
Hey, is not located in the belly?
Is it in the belly?
Or, well, it's under the main wheels. Well,
yeah, it's in the wheel wells, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the APU is located between the two main wheel wells, and it's accessed through the left side for servicing. Where is the APU external shutdown T-handle located? Where do I... Mr. Nicholson. Hello, Mr. Nicholson. What the hell is that? Mr. Nicholson, are you there? Oh, you know, if I don't get an answer, Mr. Nicholson, I'm going to have to get you on attendance.
I think my
I think your mic's screwed, or you're just, I don't know. Mr. Jerox, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Dar.
Ah, God bless you,
But
sir. Your mic working fine?
Yeah, but I haven't got a fucking clue what the answer is.
Give it a shot.
I think it's in the.
Hold on. Give it a shot, Eric. Where do you think? You know where the APU is, right?
Yeah.
So where do you think? And I said the left side is where we service it. So where do you think it is?
So would it be on the left side of the APU or in that compartment?
Like up in the wing well, just left of the. So if we go to the left wheel well and then turn and look forward, just outside the wheel well on the rear spar is the APU shutdown T handle with the fire bottle and the APU panel. It's all there.
All right.
Beautiful. Who can I get here? Mr. Cove. Are you there, Mr. Cove?
Yeah, I'm here.
Beautiful. How do I shut down the APU from outside?
Pull the red T handle.
Yeah, that's pretty well it. Pull that T handle, and then you would fire the bottle. Now, remember, the APU has its own auto fire setting, so auto shutdown. It's that black guarded switch on the APU panel in the cockpit. If that's armed and there's power on the airplane, the APU will automatically do this. So even if the APU say again? Hello? Okay, so if the APU auto fired, automatically fought the fire, you would still pull that T handle and you would still fire the bottle to make sure that it did do what it's supposed to do. Okay, number 7. Who do I have here? Mr. Hartley. Where's the APU control panel located in the cockpit?
To the right of the door as you're walking in.
I think you're right. Beautiful. It's to the right, just to probably around your hip height. That's where the APU panel is, on the back CB panel right side. Okay, Mr. Matiti, where's the battery located? Beecham. He's probably eating too, eh? You see how I'm finding all kinds of people just kind of tuning me in, but okay. Mr. Amaral, are you there? Ian. Hey, Doug, is your mic working now?
Dar, is my mic working?
Yes, it is, Doug.
Okay, sorry about earlier. I don't know what's going on with my computer.
That's all right, bud.
But the battery, I believe, is located in the belly of the aircraft.
Ah, thanks, Doug. You're right. It is in the belly, just after the nose gear in the E&E bay there. Thank you very much, Douglas. Okay, what may be inhibited if the ship's battery is disconnected? Mr. Watson.
Ground power unit?
No.
Oh, wait a minute. What was the question?
Number 9, what may be inhibited if the ship's battery is disconnected? In other words, what won't work?
I'm not sure.
Can anybody take a stab at that?
Fire extinguishers.
Exactly. The fire suppression system may be inhibited. Not every airplane, but there's a good chance. Okay, number 10. Benoit Lalasse. How will you address the cockpit in an emergency?
I'm assuming with the rope out of the window.
Yeah, that's an option. That's for sure. So we have 2 options. We can go out the front entry door or the windows if we have to. So keep that in mind. Beautiful. Okay. Mr. Zarvis, are you there? Mr. Zarvis? Hello, Mr. Zarvis? Oh. Mr. Zarvis, are you there now? Luke.
Yeah.
Luke. What does the acronym ATIS stand for? Luke.
Hello?
Hello, Luke. What's the acronym ATIS stand for?
Wasn't it the aerodrome?
Arrow, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Come on, Luke. You just got to know this. Can anybody jump in and help?
I forgot.
Aerodrome Terminal Information Service.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. So what information can I get on that? Who was that just answered that? Was it Mr. Giroux again? Jewett?
Evan Jewett.
What's some of the information, Evan?
Temperature, dew point, barometric pressure, wind, direction and speed, weather, runway use, and NOTAMs.
Perfect. Excellent. And why do we need it?
To get our data for the power assurance check and to even just decide whether or not it's a good idea to do a power assurance check.
Perfect. Very well. That's exactly correct. Thank you very much. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Here's one. Mr. Olendi. Let's see if you can get this. Are you there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm here, Dar.
Okay. Can you tell me what's the standard day parameter?
15, is it 15 degrees?
Yeah.
No wind.
Yeah. And what's the altimeter setting? Barometric pressure.
29.
Yeah, that's right.
To,
Yes, excellent. 2992, 15 degrees C, dry air, no wind, sea level pressure. Perfect. That's good. So 2992, 15 degrees. The data plate on the JT8 when we do our power assurance test, Eric, can you tell me what's on that data plate? Maverick, you there?
It's called Maverick. Sorry, it cut out. It has EPR, right? But I don't know what else. Honestly.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it does. It has the EPR for part power is 1.65 on our JT8. It also has the engine serial number and our part power N2 RPM. So those are the most important things that you're going to have. So it's going to be the engine serial number and the part power N2 RPM. Beautiful. Okay, what data is collected from the engine run manual? I'll tell you that. We're going to get an N2 correction.
We shipped one.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Oh, where's the part power stop? Okay, who wants to answer that?
FCU.
That's on the FCU.
Beautiful. It's on the FCU. Yes, it is. Okay, so the data that's collected from the aircraft engine manual will be our N2 correction, our part power EPR for that day, and our off EPR will come out of the manual. So takeoff EPR, part power EPR, and our N2 correction. Those are the things we need. Okay, here we go. Number 8. Where are we here? Mr. Mullen, are you there?
Yes.
Good. Thank you for being there, Mr. Mullen. What do we do when you arrive to the aircraft? What are you going to do?
The external safety?
Yes, I think that's correct. When you arrive at the airplane, you're going to do the external safety inspection. The answer's right below. God bless you. Yeah. Okay. So, who can I get down here? Wyatt Hill. Can you describe the external safety inspection to me?
Yeah, they started the nose gear for like chocks and blocks and stuff like that. Gear doors. I just wanted to check the configuration of the aircraft too.
Yeah, good.
Then you go to your main gear, and same kind of thing.
Yeah. What else? What's additional at the main gear?
Brakes and hydraulics.
Yeah, that's right. And there's one more thing on our 727.
APU inlet.
Yeah, APU. Very good. That's pretty good, Wyatt. Yeah. So when we get there, we're doing the external safety inspection. And he's right. As we approach the airplane, we're checking the configuration, FOD, and all that other stuff, what's behind, what's in front. When we get there, external safety inspection. So the external starts at the nose gear. We check for chocks, tires, condition, steering, torsion links are connected, gear pin is in, door configuration. That's about it, right? And oleo extension. That you're checking just basic safety and for leaks and things like that. And the tire pressures or the tires are inflated, no flat tires. And you go to the main gear. Do all of that again, plus the brakes. So you check that there's no leaks. There's brake deboost valves. There's brake wear indicators. We also check the APU inlet and exhaust and the APU panel to make sure that the fire panel is normal. The APU is usually located in the tail, but we still go to the tail on this airplane. And we have access to the top of the wings to make sure there's nothing up there, boxes, people, whatever, everything's closed up. And the tail looks good. And that there's nothing that the airplane's backed up to that we have to worry about when we power up. Okay, the internal safety inspection. What the heck? Who's going to tell me that one? Mr. Follows, can you tell me what we do in the internal safety inspection?
Make sure all the breakers are pulled.
Pulled?
Yeah. And making sure the configuration is the same as what is on the outside.
Yeah. And what else? Anyone?
That's all I got here.
That's all you got? Okay. So you're right. You go inside, we check our circuit breakers. We make sure that the airplane's configuration is the same as the outside.
Do a walkthrough of the aircraft.
That's right. We walk through the airplane, make sure that all the doors, but before we do the walkthrough, we turn on the emergency exit lights. We go through our walkthrough of the airplane. We make sure all the doors are closed. There's no unrequired personnel on the airplane. Make a decision, your decision, whether they stay or they go. And then you come back to the front, check your battery, and you can do the battery anytime in this sequence, but do the battery, make sure it's a minimum. Who could tell me the minimum battery voltage?
22.
22, beautiful, 22 volts. And then when that's all done, emergency lights off, and then we can select the external power or the APU online and bring the power up. Okay. Number 11. Who can I ask? Monique, are you there? Monique?
I'm here.
Monique?
I'm here.
Okay, there you go. Is the checklist accomplished during the preliminary cockpit procedures or after they are completed? So what I'm asking is, do we do our flow first and then the checklist, or do we do it at the same time?
After.
Beautiful. We do it after. It is an after-the-fact checklist. It's we do the flow, and then when we're ready to do the checklist, everybody should have been completed their flow, and away we go. Perfect. So where are we here? Mr. McCluskey, number 12, when all the checks are complete and the crew is ready, the ACA will proceed with what? Mr. McCluskey?
Not quite sure there, Doc.
Not quite sure. Anybody? Can anybody come up with anything there?
Safety briefing.
Ah, very good, Mr. Olendi. Yeah, you're going to do your briefing. And when the briefing's completed, he'll do the before start checklist, and the checklist will be accomplished, and then he's ready to go outside and get controller permission and ground permission for the engine start. Very good, Mr. Olendi. Number 13, what must be turned off and closed prior to starting the engine? Mr. Merritt, you got anything there? Mason. Hello, Mason.
Yeah, sorry.
Mason, you awake?
I am now.
Good boy. So what must be turned off and closed prior to starting the engines?
I'm not 100%.
Yeah, okay. So what we want to make sure is that the packs are off. Okay. And the geez, you think I'd remember this? Does anybody else have it? Well, it was turned off. So say again.
Hydraulics.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much. So we got to turn off the packs, and the hydraulics is closed for the engine start. Okay, number Kate Stoyanovsky. Katie Stoyanovsky, are you there, young lady?
Yes, I am.
God bless. Number 14, do we need continuous ignition for the engine start?
I want to say yes.
You sure?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but I think it's like beneficial.
Well, it couldn't hurt. It's not going to hurt anything if you do put it on, but we do not require it. Remember, we have the continuous ignition is basically operational, and for the air crew, and the start switch uses high intensity ignition, so we don't need it. Okay. Katie Rees, what's the minimum duct pressure before we attempt the engine start? Unloaded.
I have no idea.
You must know. Come on. What's the duct pressure before we even crank the engine?
I just remember us yelling duct pressure in the cockpit.
40.
I don't remember the exact one.
Who said that?
40 psi.
40 psi.
40 psi. That was Omar with that Detroit singer voice. That's right. So
27.
I have
No.
12 recorded as well.
That's loaded.
That's loaded. Unloaded is 40.